Welcome to Physician Heal Thyself, the podcast, empowering you to take a whole person approach to your well-being, spirit, soul, and body. Join me, your host, Dr. Lara, naturopathic doctor, entrepreneur, and a servant of Jesus Christ. We are not just a body, we are spirit and soul. It's time to integrate medicine and spirituality into our healing. Let's get started. Welcome back to Physician Heal Thyself, the podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lara, and this is episode 51, and I want to dedicate this episode to a topic that's very much talked about right now, and that is menopause. So we're going to talk about the power in the pause and thriving through menopause. And I want to put a different spin from what you might be used to hearing. You know, I hear a lot of things on social media on how women are struggling through menopause, and we focus on all the bad things about it. And we don't do a lot of educating to the women who are not there yet, who should be preparing for themselves for such a transition in their life. And that's exactly what it is. It is a transition. And so I'm going to talk about it from a cultural perspective. I'll speak to it to a spiritual perspective as well as to what this transition means for women. Unfortunately, there are some very hard known facts and truths about what happens to women's bodies as they are transitioning through this. So once again, I encourage that men also listen in on this conversation, because, you know, if you're married to a woman or you plan to be married to a woman, you want to understand what she's going through when these changes occur, or even better, how to do some of the preventative work, you know, up front before women get to this age so that they have a smoother transition through menopause. So we're going to go ahead and, you know, get started on this conversation. So many women are going to experience very common symptoms that show up as hot flashes. And this is not just feeling hot. It is an internal heat inside of her that she feels she's burning up, and she immediately will start to sweat, and that will make her feel a little panicky. Night sweats, and I mean, they're leaving the pillows soaked, right, in their sweat. Mood swings can vary from feeling irritated and angry to sad, depressed, having anxiety, brain fog, right? They can't remember. Their short-term memory is compromised. They can't memorize things. They're just struggling a lot with cognitive function. And of course, sleep issues. You know, you'll find that a lot of women through menopause cannot fall asleep and stay asleep. And the downside is that they're tired all day, and at night they're wired up and they just cannot fall asleep. And there's a lot of other symptoms that go along with it. You know, people don't want to talk about this in the open, but there's, you know, women will experience vaginal dryness. And because of that, they will experience pain with intercourse. So if your wife doesn't want to have sex, it's because her hormones are low and there's discomfort down there. And so, you know, when estrogen is the hormone that gives the elasticity to the tissue in that area, and it's low, you know, there's vaginal dryness. There's no secretions that help lubricate this area. And so it makes it very difficult for women to have sexual intercourse. And these are, you know, adult conversations. So if you don't want your children to hear this, then don't have them listen to it. But the reality is that women's bodies go through a transition. And here's another thing that women don't find out till they're later on in their 60s. And that is that women in their 60s and older, they have a higher risk of developing urinary tract infections, UTIs. And it doesn't matter what you eat and how clean you are, you just now happen to be at risk at developing, you know, UTIs more frequent. And those UTIs can, you know, sometimes go unnoticed without symptoms and make it its way to the kidney. And oftentimes women end up in the hospital with a kidney infection, and they had a UTI and had no signs or symptoms of it. So the reason is, you know, the vaginal bacteria changes, the urinary bacteria changes, and so that gets compromised. Look, women who have children are always going to have a lot more symptoms through menopause than women who've never had children. You know, women are carrying all that extra weight in their pelvic floor. Oftentimes women are not taking care and resolving and getting physical therapy or doing pelvic floor exercises to strengthen all those fine muscles down there. And ultimately what happens is women, because of pregnancies and childbirth, they'll have a higher risk of vaginal prolapse, urinary prolapse, and you know, they'll have issues that are not easy for them to deal with. And these are the silent things that women do not talk to their husbands about. They rarely talk to their friends about, but they are happening. And so this is why one of my big pet peeves is seeing pregnant women running and lifting super heavy. Even if you had been working out before the pregnancy and you have a strong pelvic floor, if you're doing any jumping motion, anything that's pushing that uterus down, you already have a lot of weight. You have a baby inside of you. And so if you're doing all these crazy exercises, you know, you won't see the consequences of your actions until you're later on in life, usually in menopause. And so anyone who's listening to this, any woman who's listening to this episode who has experienced vaginal prolapse, you know that that is not something to play with. You know, sometimes if it's very severe, women have to do surgery to lift up back the uterus. Basically, it's the uterus exiting. Yeah, it's very traumatic for women when they go through childbirth and they have a full vaginal prolapse, right? And so they're having to do surgery to pull this organ back in its place. And so unfortunately, a lot of women just don't do enough pelvic floor exercises, which I think is very important. So a lot of symptoms that women go through, a lot of changes physically, but let's talk about just the mental and emotional changes that women are going through, that oftentimes they find themselves experiencing identity crisis. There's this identity shift, and they start to go through this emotional roller coaster, because the reality is that the end of your reproductive years, it's coming. It's coming to an end. The menopause is, the period is going to stop, and the body starts to slow down, and women feel that shift. And even though they could be in their 50s, right, late 40s, and they have no intentions of having a pregnancy, but there's that reality that in their mind and in their soul, they realize, this is it. I'm not going to make any more. I'm not going to have any more children. My body's going through a change. There's almost like a grieving process of even the grieving of this old person, this old self, right? There's a grieving process of even your youth. And so we have so many things in media that constantly keep reminding us of what beauty is. And beauty, natural beauty is one thing, but beauty is not injecting your faces with Botox and filling your lips and doing all these invasive surgeries. This is a desperate move to preserve your youth. But the reality is that the deep fear that women really are experiencing that is not talked about is the fear of aging, and ultimately the fear of dying. Because ultimately that's what we are all going to go through, is that transition of dying, of this physical body dying. So if you're only pouring into your physical body and you're not pouring into your soul, you're going to find yourself living a very miserable life. So I highly encourage that you take a holistic approach, meaning you take care of yourself in all of these areas. But there is a real physical shift that is happening here that is not to be ignored, because as these hormones come down, women start to feel like they're losing their mind. It's very common for me to hear women tell me, I feel like I'm going crazy. Do I need to go to a mental hospital? I don't feel myself. And yeah, because your body is slowing down. It's saying pause. It's not saying to stop. It's just saying slow down. We are going to slow down, and there's a point here that we're going to pause because there's a rebirth that is happening in you. And it really is a beautiful experience. If you shift the way you think about it, if you shift the way you perceive things, you're going to see that there is beauty and there's power in this pause, in menopause. So a couple things that I want to talk about, like I said, let's talk about that power of the pause, because the worldview of menopause is you are really slowing down. But in this phase, it's not a passive pause that you're having. It's actually a very active and intentional and very powerful process that a woman is going through. In this pause, I wrote down a couple of things here. A pause is where we reconnect. A pause is where we hear ourselves again. A pause is where something new begins. And so oftentimes women, as they're going through menopause or after menopause, they report these things. They report they found their voice. They have a stronger voice now. They have a clear sense of self. There's boundaries that are put in place now. Maybe areas that you used to struggle, things you used to have a hard time saying no to. You are now setting boundaries and you're able to say no without guilt. Let me be clear about that. Because we say no, but then we feel guilty for saying no to that thing. Because sometimes there's good things out there that we want to be a part of and we want to help. But if you're overwhelmed with your family, work, and other life situations, you can't say yes to everything. And so it's important to find your voice and be able to use that power and say, unfortunately, I cannot be part of that. And just say no and not feel any guilt. And also, saying no without feeling the need to justify your no. A no is a no and that's it. No, I can't make it. You don't have to explain yourself why. It's just, I find that women have this over need of trying to explain themselves why they can't do something. And, you start to live in this you start to develop this deep desire to live authentically. And it's not that you weren't living authentically before, but you're oftentimes women, they're being wives, they're being moms, they're being somebody to everybody, and they often put themselves on the back burner. It's been through generations and generations. I've had conversations all my life with women who were older. As a matter of fact, I was one of those weird kids that I would prefer to sit around the older women and just sit there and just listen to their conversations. I found it so entertaining and so enlightening to hear the stories of their life, of older women. And that right there is the gift of women when they go through menopause. That transition turns them into something much greater. So I want to talk in this next segment about the many different ancient cultures around the world and how they viewed women as they were entering menopause and as they transitioned through menopause. This is world wisdom, ancient views. It's not nothing new, but our culture has shifted things to make it seem like you're drying up and you're dying and you're not beautiful anymore because you're old. You're an old hag, right? But many cultures saw women who were going through this transition as elders, as spiritual leaders, as healers, and truth tellers. Listen to this again. This is so empowering. They were elders, they were spiritual leaders, they were healers, and truth tellers. These women would pass on knowledge to the next generation. And that's what I received as a young girl, as a young teenager, as a young woman, when I was around older women. And by old, I mean in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. I would hear their stories, their life, the things that they learned, from the good and the bad and the ugly, right? And so that is the gift that they gifted to me. Some of them were not even related to me. So let's take a brief overview of like what other cultures around the world are, how they honor women during this transition. So in Native American tribes, They often honored postmenopausal women as spiritual leaders and believed to carry wisdom, no longer distracted by the moon cycle. In Chinese culture, menopause is not viewed as a loss, but it's a rebalancing of energy, a shift towards inner cultivation. In African traditions, elders were venerated. The end of the menstrual cycle for them it marked a transition into leadership, not invisibility. In African cultures, once again, they viewed women who were going through the menstrual cycle as a transition into leaders, the true leaders, because now they're sages. They have experience, and wisdom is knowledge that you apply without even thinking about it, because now it's internalized and you know better. And in many indigenous cultures, this time is when a woman becomes the wise one, the keeper of the stories, the mentor to other women, to other men. And so in our modern culture, we've lost that reverence. We lost the respect and the honor of what women are. It's sad that we even have to have a damn debate about what is a woman. Because if you don't have a vagina and you don't deal with these issues, you're not a woman. You're just not. Women who go through menopause and have these vaginal atrophy and these vaginal prolapse and have all these issues, unfortunately, that is the price that we pay as being women and being the birth givers in this world. And it is an honor. I don't see it as a sacrifice. A sacrifice is when you don't want to do it. But when you go through the process of being a mother and then going through menopause, it's devotion. The word devotion is very different than sacrifice. Women who choose to become mothers, we're devoted to being mothers to our children. We're devoted to raising them, to being healthy and happy and wholehearted people. So it saddens me to see social media depicting what a menopausal woman should look like. You're not going to look like you're 20. You're just not going to be 20 years old. And it's not cute. It's not being judgmental. You don't look cute acting like you're 20. There's so much more value in you when you acknowledge your identity, who God created you to be, who He designed you to be. What is your assignment on this world? And understanding that when your children, women, when your children grow up and move on and build their own lives, now what are you left with? What are you left with, and who are you? And this is where women go through that transition. Who am I? Who am I without my children? Who am I without being a wife? Who am I with not being a daughter to someone, a sister to someone? Who am I? And these are questions that you should be asking early on in your life. So if you're 20, 30 years old, start seeking that. So when you get to menopause, it doesn't just dawn upon you. I have a quick story to share here. When I was going through my medical training, I was working at this clinic, and this beautiful woman in her early 50s came in, and she was going through that transition of menopause. So a lot of people ask, well, when do you transition through menopause? And that's different for everyone. Ask your mom what age she transitioned to menopause. If you don't know, then that makes it difficult. But usually the age that your mother transitioned through menopause is usually the age that you will as well. So typically it's been 50s to mid 50s that women start to transition. And the way you know you're really in active menopause is you haven't had a period for 12 months. But usually you don't start to have a period, but you have all these other symptoms as well, right? And there are lab work that you can do to confirm if you are going through menopause. And those two tests that you want to make sure they're checked are FSH and LH. They'll be super high regardless of when you do them. And that's the sign that the brain is telling the ovaries make more hormone, but it's not receiving the signal. And that's the body is saying we're slowing down. We're not going to make any more. We're done. So, but that's what menopause is. But unfortunately, we do see some women can genetically. That's just the way genetic makeup is can start in their mid to late 40s as well. But we're seeing women younger and younger going through menopause, even as young as in their mid to late 30s. And in my opinion, that's too young to start going through menopause. And so those hormones keep you feeling good and keep you feeling young as well. So I had this woman present. She was in her early 50s, beautiful woman. All her kids were grown and out of the house. And she had what she claimed a wonderful marriage, and everything had been happy. And then she started going through these changes, right? These hormonal changes. She wasn't even sure it was that. But she started the reason she came in because she felt unlike herself. She felt like she was going through an identity crisis, and she alluded that to her children now being out of the home and on their own. And so she tells me with such sadness in her tone, she says, I don't even know what I like for myself. I've given everything to my family, to my husband, and to my children. She was a stay-at-home mom. I never worked. I just dedicated my life to them. And now they're grown and moved away, and my husband's always traveling for work, and I find myself being alone at home. And I'm trying to find things to do for myself, and I don't even know what I like. And so we would brainstorm ideas, and we would pick something out of that list for her to go try something new. She was like an 18-year-old girl who was just leaving her parents' home to explore who she is. Now, I'm grateful, and she was grateful to have provided and devoted her life to her family. But now what about her? Here she is, feeling disconnected, feeling alone. And now these hormones don't make it any easier because they make her feel crazy. So, and she has no identity of who she is without those roles in her life. And the reality, women, especially if your children are young, is that your children will grow up and move out just like we did. It's just the cycle of life. And this is why I encourage women to find one or two things that they really enjoy doing. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you work and you take care of your kids, whatever it is, find something that you are excited about to do. Whether it's working out, whether it's painting or drawing or writing and reading a book, whatever it is that your interests are, playing an instrument, singing, something, dancing, you have to have something that you do for yourself. And I know what some women are saying, yeah, but you don't understand, I don't have time. No, you do have time. You need to make the time. You need to make the effort and communicate that to your family by setting those boundaries and saying, hey, these days, mommy is going to be doing these things for herself. Just like that. And oftentimes right now, I'm in my mid-40s and I do have school-age children. And I'll tell you that part of the problem is that we need to be the ones to set boundaries with our children's schools, with their teachers, with all the activities your kids can and cannot do. The wisest thing I heard a family share with me one time, they had an annual meeting at the beginning of the school year, and they would sit their kids down, and the kids had to decide on one or two activities that they wanted to do throughout the school year. And that was it. And everyone had to agree on that. They had to look at schedules and make sure that it worked cohesively with the family. And they all had to approve that schedule. So it was like a little business meeting where they had to okay it. And no one was allowed to add all these extra add-on activities as the school year was going. Because that teaches children to know that, yes, we want to consider your gifts, your skills, your interests. But you're not the center of the world, honey. I tell my girls that all the time. I love you. However, I'm not going to kill myself doing all these things that are not important. So pick the one or two things that you absolutely love, that you are good at, that you love and you enjoy doing, and do that. But I see moms running to the soccer game and the baseball game and the basketball game and all of that. And they're overweight and they're like, I don't have time to work out. You know why you don't have time to work out? Because you're making your children the top priority. You're not making your marriage. You're not making yourself the priority in that. You're not even making God the priority in that. We need to stop glorifying our children and putting them on these pedestals. It's okay to say no to our children. They can, as they get older, they can do all that stuff. Plus, I've seen, and I'm not trying to be mean here, but I keep it very real with my girls. My oldest dances and she's a beautiful dancer, but if she tried to sing, she sucks at it. I'm not going to waste my time with an activity that she doesn't enjoy and she's not really good at. And that teaches them to be real. You got to be real with them, which is why this authenticity part through menopause is so important, because you haven't said the things you really wanted to say and you've been holding on to saying those things, but now you're going through this transition and you just don't have the ability to compose yourself right through this. So a couple of things that I want to talk about is, how do you thrive through this transition? What are some things that you can do aside from doing the blood work? Because I'm going to say, if your doctor's not going to do it, find someone that is going to check a full panel of your hormones, starting from pregnenolone, DHEA, your total testosterone, free testosterone, estradiol, estrone, your progesterone, and cortisol levels in the morning. And if they can, do all cortisol levels throughout the day from morning to nighttime. That would be the ideal. But you want to get an idea of where your hormones at. And then I had the previous episode on what to do, the common mistakes women do. So go back to that episode and listen to that, which is the diet, making sure you're sleeping well, physical activity, managing your stress. But some other things that, you can start really taking a look at and just acknowledging is that as you go through this transition of menopause, that it's okay to rest and reflect. These hormones are coming down and it's slowing you down for a reason. It doesn't mean you stop. It just means you slow down to rest and reflect. And so honor this shift. Journal how you're feeling. You'd be surprised what journaling does. If you were to journal for 20 minutes, uninterrupted, 4 times a week, you're going to start seeing a trend and a pattern in what you're writing about. And you're going to start discovering a lot about yourself in your journaling. It's also a way to purge mentally and emotionally without the fear of someone judging or criticizing you. You can just journal it down. But be okay with the idea of slowing down and prioritizing things in your life, right? And I always tell women as they're journaling or as they're going through this process to ask God, what am I being invited into in this season? What's new for you? There's a rebirth. What's new for you? And there's nothing wrong with asking God, who am I? What's my identity? Who did you create me to be, right? There's so much power in these questions. And sometimes you have to sit with it. It's not going to come all down at once, but you have to sit with this question and explore it and let God pour into you during this time. Another pointer for, thriving through menopause is it's so important to have community. Don't isolate yourself. There's other women that are experiencing what you're experiencing. And that's one thing I will say, that women are, on average, pretty good about reaching to other women and talking about these issues very openly. So find your people who are your tribe, talk to them, laugh through this. Laughter is medicine. Some of these things that happen is, what can you do about it? You can cry about it too. It's okay to cry if you need to. And that's the other thing about the emotions that are coming up as you go through menopause, because it is a wild roller coaster. It's okay to acknowledge those emotions, those feelings you have, and just surrender them. Surrender them to God and have Him help you carry you through that. But if you truly do have very severe symptoms, know that you don't have to suffer with that. There are natural things that you can do. And if hormone replacement therapy is for you, do it just to maintain your sanity. So there's a lot of power in sharing your stories. So once again, just wrapping it up on the importance of community. find your community, even if it's one other person. The third point is to support your body. And this is from nutrition to herbal support to moving your body. Even if you've never been exercising, maybe it's the time now. Let me tell you how many 70 and 80-year-old women and men have said, if there was one age I can go back to, it would be my 50s. So if you're in your 50s and you're going through this transition, movement is still something you should really consider. Whether it's walking or hiking, whatever your activity that you want to, dancing, that you want to do, that'd be fine. And then, sleep, making sure that if you're having difficulty with sleep, which most women who are going through menopause are, I'm telling you that progesterone at night is going to save you. It's going to help you to calm down and fall asleep. And so, take care of your physical body the same way that when you were pregnant and you ate healthy and you took care of your body. It's no different going through menopause. It is a season, it's a transition that we should support ourselves physically. And then the fourth step is, redefine your self-worth, right? What does that mean to you? Not what the world is telling you, but what does self-worth look like to you? Oftentimes through menopause, many women who have not healed through trauma, right, unhealed trauma, will surface at this time, really bringing it to the surface, making it seem like it's really in your face now. Because your body is saying, hey sis, we're tired of carrying this around. When are we going to face it? When are we going to, heal through this? So honor your body and yourself to heal through those things. So, you're going to be valuable no matter what you're producing. You're valuable no matter who you're pleasing or not pleasing. You're valuable even if you're not able to reproduce a baby anymore. You are valuable simply for just being who you are. God created you with worth, and you're valuable. What you're able to offer to other people does not determine your self-worth. And sometimes we need to hear that from others. You need to hear that from others because you think that your value is attached to the number of activities that you're doing throughout your day. I have had women who show me their calendar on their phone, and it's back to back to back with activities. And they see the value of themselves in how many activities they have on their calendar. So when your physical body can't do that anymore, can't support all those activities, you start to feel like you're worthless. And that's a lie. So slow down, pause, and reclaim your worth. Step number 5 is one that I love. I feel like I found that in my 40s. I didn't have to wait to 50. But that's to claim your voice. Claim your voice. This is the time to speak your God-given truth, to stand in your story, and to lead. And however that looks like for you. And this is the interesting thing. We have grown up in our families telling us who they think we are, right? Whether it's been directly or unconsciously, they've been projecting to us who they perceive we are. Schools have told us who they think we are. Religion has told us who they perceive us to be. And the government and the news and the media, and there's all of these direct and indirect messaging telling us who we are. And this is a moment. And really, I don't want women or men to wait till they're older. You should be doing this when you're young. Like pause, slow down, go into a meditative state and ask God, who am I? Who am I? Who did you create me to be? Is this part of my identity, or is this from the world? Is this identity from you, or is it from my family, from religion, from the world, of what they've projected to me to make me believe this is who I am? It's a beautiful time to be able to claim your voice and your identity is through this process of menopause. So like I've said before, this pause is holy, it's powerful, and this pause is yours. It's for you to take it, to honor that, and to slow it down. So I'm not talking about this conversation on menopause. I'm not addressing, if you've noticed, I haven't talked about which bioidentical hormones are better than the other and all that. You know what? All of social media is plagued with all of that. There's a lot of noise around menopause. with do this hormone and do that hormone and do this thing and all of that. But no one is really speaking life into women in the reality of this is a time to honor yourself. It's okay if you do the hormones. I'm not against it. I help many women with the hormone replacement therapies. But take the time to really honor this transition, because eventually, with or without hormones, you are going to go through the process of menopause. And it is a privilege to be able to go through the process of menopause, because women who don't go through menopause usually die before they go through menopause, you know? So as we age, it is a privilege to be able to get older. I want to refer to some scriptures about how aging is not equated with a decline, but it's with honor and authority and wisdom. So in Proverbs 16:31, it says, "Gray hair is a crown of splendor, and it is attained in the way of righteousness." It is a rite of passage for women to enter this new season of womanhood. And you should walk into it with power and authority, not like a whimpering cat. Not whimpering, not being whiny, not feeling like a victim. Like, you should be honored to be able to go through this transition, because some women don't get to go through that transition, especially when they die young. Titus 2 speaks how the older woman is, they see older women as mentors, guiding younger generations in love and self-control and godly living. What if you learned all the lessons and you're focused, you're reflecting on the lessons you've learned in your life up to this point? What things have you learned that you can turn around and teach your daughters, your granddaughters, or other women? And let's be real. Like, let's have a very real and genuine conversation. Because oftentimes, oh man, I don't know if I should go down this rabbit hole on this conversation, maybe another time, but I get a lot of women that pretend like they've had perfect lives. And I not just in my clinic do I hear these conversations, but oftentimes outside when I'm meeting people, they start telling me their life story. They start sharing with me what's happened in their life. And they make it seem like the marriage was great and the raising the children was great. But I'm telling you, they end up in this point in their life that they're less resilient to putting up with people's BS. I heard it was a reel on social media, and the title was How Menopause is Causing a Rise in Divorces. And I laughed. I listened to it. I'm like, this is baloney. Menopause does not cause divorces. Menopause is not a person that's coming in and interfering with divorce. Chances are that there were issues in that marriage to begin with far back that were never addressed. And some women, they try to address things early on, and then they just give up and surrender, and they just stay married. They just go through the motions. But here's the thing about menopause, is that those hormones that allowed that woman to have more self-control, like progesterone, keeps us calm, cool, and collective, it's not there anymore. And she's not feeling it, and she is less likely to tolerate the nonsense of other people, including their spouse. So if there's unresolved issues in the marriage and this woman gets through menopause, yeah, you better believe you're going to see something come out different from her. And this is why it's not uncommon that women in their 50s usually end up filing for divorce. So men and women, if this is you, take care of the issue before, because there's something that's happening in her brain, in her body, and in her soul that she is just not willing to tolerate anymore. And oftentimes women who do continue to put up with especially abusive behaviors, right, from their spouse, they end up developing cancers. I've seen a number of women who had healthy lifestyles. They seemed well. They never had any medical conditions. All of a sudden, they develop what? Breast cancer, uterine cancers, ovarian cancers, and it's not familial, meaning it's not genetic in their family for women to have that. And so there's many components to it, but the relationships that we or in a day-to-day basis, it impacts our health. And so it's not menopause that causes a divorce. It's the lack of communication and not resolving the issues before you get to that point. And so I cannot emphasize enough the slowing down and taking time to take care of you. I always reference to a good book that I loved. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits there of highly effective people is to stop and sharpen the saw, meaning that you can't cut a tree with a dull blade. You need to sharpen the saw. And so if you don't stop to take care of yourself and sharpen yourself, you're running in life with a dull blade. You're running through life being dull and not fully with energy. So if you're in your 40s and you're like, I'm not in menopause yet, but I see some of these red flags, start addressing them, because it's better that you start taking care of them sooner than later, and start having those real hard conversations with your family, your spouse, your children, to ensure that you are not stressing, because this stress causes excess cortisol and is going to steal from all the other hormones. So, hey, I hope that you guys enjoy this conversation. It's very different, right? It's not what to do, but it's how to be. How to be, the mindset that you need to shift to, the lifestyle that you need to move into. Find what works for you. What works for you is not going to be the same for me. What works for me might not work for you. But find what works for you. And just remember that pause is holy. It's powerful, and it's yours. It is your time to slow down and invest into yourself, into your well-being. So I hope this message has brought you some joy, some light to the topic on menopause. And if you know any woman that's struggling, suffering through menopause, share this podcast with them. And until next time, be blessed. Thank you for listening to Physician Heal Thyself, the podcast. If you like what you've heard, please like, share, and subscribe. Help this message reach more people who may need to hear it. Leave your comments. I want to know what you think. If you're interested in learning more about Raices, visit our website at raicesndmedcenter.com. Until next time, be blessed.